Welcome to the Society of Cryptid Hunters podcast. Josh and David are just two regular guys who share a passion for cryptids and our world's weird and unknown things. Please follow us on your favorite podcast platform and consider supporting us by subscribing or liking our show. Join us on our journey as we delve into the world of cryptozoology.
This November in America, the biggest event was held for only the second time in our nation's history, the UAP hearings. You might have thought I was going to say something else, but that's not what I was going to say.
Yeah, let's get right into this because this could be I think this might be our longest episode. I'm just going to go ahead and call it that right now.
Yeah, and I have a whole lot to talk about.
There's a lot we'd like to get through, so make sure you got a nice cold drink, or if you're a coffee drinker, depends on the time of day. Grab something, sit back, relax, and enjoy as we discuss these things and take notes. We love to hear your comments on them, a lot of the thoughts you have in these processes. But yeah, it was an interesting week, David, to say the least. I had a chance to see Luis Elizondo at the Texas Theater on November 20th, and we'll get into what I saw there and what I heard. And we'll get into our thoughts on the whole UAP and disclosure processes that are going on right now. And
so today's episode, if you didn't already guess, is about Luis Elizondo and the UAP hearings that were held this month for only the second time. It was about a year ago. I think it was like September, of 2023. The last one was held. And I don't know if you got a chance to watch it, Josh, but I'd seen a bunch of clips of it, but I watched the entire thing last night, which was like 2 hours and 15 minutes. So it was very long. But why don't you get into how it was talking to him, and why don't you talk a little bit about his book, and then we'll go from there into the hearings.
Yeah, so not to make this like a long, drawn-out, boring episode at all, because we normally talk about cryptids. And I did mention at one point we were the Tinfoil Hat Society, so we like to talk about UFOs and UAPs and other things besides unseen and unknown animals all the time. Yeah, but this episode is going to kind of cross over to more of a realm. So I know that listeners to the show are also very active and interested in the UAP disclosures and also UFOs in general and extraterrestrials. We talked about aliens in the past. Are they cryptids or not? I asked that question to some people recently, and they actually found some friends that are big into this stuff too recently. I didn't know. I had coffee with them multiple times, and they brought up I was seeing Luis Elizondo, and they, what? That's crazy. And I'm like, you know who he is? Like, yeah. So it was pretty exciting, and it turned out their favorite cryptid was also the Mothman. So, but yeah, it's been quite a road going through these things, and years and years and years of personal interest in the UFOs, UAP, extraterrestrial. I guess we're going to call them UAPs for this sense because of the hearings and everything. But yeah, I'm actually sitting here, right here, in my hand, holding the Luis Elizondo book, and I did pre-order it, got it, read it. It is signed by him now, which is fantastic. Yep, that's what I got right there. I can't see it because my screen is too bright, but it was an interesting evening. Sold out crowd, Texas Theater in Dallas. He's currently doing like a tour around the country discussing the disclosure movement, more or less not divulging anything you really haven't heard yet, because everything he talks about's already been declassified. It's literally, there's nothing he talks about that is still classified. He knows things that he still will not talk about, which is admirable, because he does say multiple times he could just come out and blow the lid off everything. But then there's a couple issues that might come with that. Is who's going to take him seriously? Would it ruin would it ruin people's other chance to come out and contribute, or would it push them back because there's such a stigma with coming out and talking about these things? And when somebody comes out and says, "Yeah, I saw this or I experienced this," there's a stigma that like, "Oh, this person's crazy," or "We've heard this for years," and that's kind of how it's kind of been, I guess, kind of like pushed behind the scenes for so many years. Absolutely. Like if you want to go back and talk about Roswell and how much that's been debated and talked about over the years, you think of it as a way as like Roswell really happened. Something really happened, and what really happened was there is some sort of extra vehicular space thing, who knows what it was, that did crash. And pieces of the wreckage were collected and may or may not have had non-human occupants. It did happen. That is something that actually happened. It's been suppressed for so many years. We're getting closer to it. That's when this really kind of all started. Now there's some things beforehand, years beforehand, that happened in other places that are on record. But I think Roswell's like the big one, the big the honey pot, if you will, of where it all kind of started.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So once you get from there and you research that and how constantly, oh, there's nothing to see at Roswell, there's nothing here, there's nothing there. You can just go through the history. It's there. The reports, the first newspaper reports were, yeah, this was stuff they'd never seen this type of metal before. There was little occupants around it, and then the next day it was like, no, it turns out it was just a weather balloon. So I mean, I simplified that, but it's kind of what happened.
So it's interesting you bring this up, and it is so coincidental that we're talking about this because recently I watched that Unsolved Mysteries episode about Roswell, which is I posted on our Facebook group. It's super fun to watch, but one thing that I always forget is that I can't remember if it's the U.S. Army or the Air Force because the Air Force Army Air Corps turned in the Air Force, but the first day they released to the news it was a flying saucer, and then the next day they retracted and said, oh, absolutely, it was a weather balloon, which that's what really started, I think, conspiracy theories. Even before like JFK, like that's like when you say it's one thing and then redact it, like that's where people start putting their tinfoil hat on. But
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's interesting because I didn't bring it out here. I gotta find it, but I do have a reproduction photo copy of that newspaper somewhere that I picked
Mm.
up when I was in Roswell. So it's basically the original newspaper. Here's a copy of it right here.
I would
So
frame that.
yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, I plan to someday. I'll get to it. I got a lot of stuff going on, but um, back to the task at hand. Yeah. So when you talk about UFOs, you get that stigma of like being crazy. Nobody's gonna believe you, or they just push it off. And I think what's interesting with what's going on now, and I'll get into a little bit of what Lou was talking about. It is kind of give you a synopsis or kind of review on the event. But it is interesting how just kind of throughout the years where people have all these things that they want to say, but they don't have platforms to say it, and then people forget about it or even don't care about it. I think an interesting thing is there is a small percentage of people that if disclosure were to happen, they say, yes, we've been visited, we've been in contact, and I think there's a good percentage of people are to be like, oh, okay, whatever. There's some people are going to be like, holy crap. And there's some people are going to just like change their whole world view. There's just different things on the way people will take it, but I don't think anything's going to like everybody's going to riot and raise up unless we're invaded and attacked. But there's and it's just interesting too with the hearings and I think the questions on the hearing on November 13th were a little bit better than they were last year, where they were actually asking questions more specifically to kind of the questions you want to get answers to. But there's a lot that, like I said earlier, Lou holds to his oath. He doesn't share certain things, but he did say he can hold things in closed door sessions a lot.
In a
Um,
skiff.
yeah, and from my understanding, those closed door sessions already happened. They're already done. Um, but he still holds to his oath and will not divulge unless it's something that is declassified.
I don't know that I don't know that. So those are, I believe, and forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, but I believe those are congressmen or senators. I can't remember which. I think they're senators actually. I think
It's a
that's what
Senate.
they are.
It was a Senate
Yeah,
hearing.
they're senators. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Matt Gaetz was in it last time. But anyway, so I don't think all of them were in a skiff. And I can't remember the actual definition of a skiff. I know what a skiff is. I've seen a skiff. But basically, it's a undisclosed area that is free of any sort of social media or anything that can do recording or emit signals or anything. And it's a closed door area where you can conduct business that is in a super secret conversation. Do I think that some of them had been in there? I don't know. I haven't heard that they even were in a closed door session with him.
Well,
Because
well, that's the thing. That's not something that's going to be reported. That's something he legit said when somebody asked him that question at the event I was at. He said that they happened, and he can't say anything about it.
yeah, well, and what I do love about Lou, and I have a whole lot of notes that I want to get into, but in my synopsis of how the hearings went, and especially with him. And I would like to say, like, there were several people there. There was a former Rear Admiral. There was a Lou. There was a guy named oh, what is it? Schoenberger,
Schonberger?
Schellenberger, and then a Mr. Gold. Which, by the way, the very last guy, the Mr. Gold, he worked for NASA. Um, can you tell me a more Men in Black name than Mr. Gold? Not that I'm saying that he's a Men in Black person, but like, come on, man. Why is your name Mr. Gold?
Yeah. It's like
Anyway,
one of the Reservoir Dogs. Mr. Pink, Mr. Orange, Mr. White,
yeah.
Mr.
But
Gold.
when it gets to him, and he was the very one last on the table, I was like, come on, man.
Yeah. Of course you are, Mr. Gold. Yeah.
Exactly.
Saw that coming a
Um,
mile away.
but my favorite thing that I wanted to get into with these hearings is I've talked about it on our podcast before, the non-human biologics, um, which I had never heard that term ever. Um, Before I had said that I was at work, and I always have YouTube up. I'll be listening to music, or I'll just have something playing in the background while I'm trying to drown out and start working. And YouTube alerted me that the UAP hearings were happening. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna listen to this. And that's when David Grush, I think is his name, the whistleblower that was
Yeah.
the Air Force intelligence officer,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
how he blew the head off of every conspiracy theorist's mind when he said non-human biologics. And Lou said it again this time. And
Mhm.
the more I thought about it, is like, what does that even mean? Um, and when you talk to, or when you listen to all four of those gentlemen talk, like, there's a weird distinction where they talk about biologics and then artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
um, that could be that could be also parented by a higher entity. Um, Lou Elizondo talked about non-oxygen life forms, which he brought up that, like, you gotta define, like, um, what a life form is, as far as, like, in what we think it is, because and that's what I started thinking. Like, that's why I wanted to bring up biologics, because I was like, what does that mean? I was like,
Yeah.
are they talking about, like, it's just not an oxygen breathing life form that, like, it might breathe? I mean, I guess, like, if you think about it, like Earth, it's what, over 70% nitrogen in our atmosphere, and there's not very small amount of oxygen that we actually breathe, but we are oxygen breathing life forms. But he was talking about, um, and I don't want to get too scientific because I don't know what I'm saying, but he was talking about chemosynthesis, and he was talking about how there's, like, life forms that don't breathe oxygen, basically. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's one thing that they're getting into. Um, I think it was David, or I think it was Grush, that was saying that uh that the life forms that they recovered, that he had seen pictures of, that they looked like, crash victims, and there wasn't a whole lot left of it. So maybe that it was that violent.
Mhm.
Um, but that term, like, what do you think of that, Weimer? Like, non-human biologics. What fires in your brain when you hear that? Because
Well,
it's so vague, and I think that it's probably a lawyer thing for it being that vague, so you don't get too specific, that where you can get in trouble for what you're saying.
yeah, that's exactly right. I think it's a lot of you have to go through these processes and slowly, like every day, a little bit of the veil's lifted. So you can't just come out and say, yeah, I think there are straight up extraterrestrials flying this thing. ET's real, because right then the stigma kicks in and you're going to be discredited for everything. So you have to slowly, it takes a long time, but this is the furthest we've ever gotten in this process. So we're talking about non-human life forms. Yes, you're saying what you saw, but you can't come out and say, them's are aliens, You just can't do it. So if there is, then something intelligent has got to be operating the UAPs. We all seen the videos. We've talked about it in some of our very first episodes on Tinfoil Hat Society about the Tic Tac and other types of things that are declassified, which you can go to YouTube and watch, and they have been released. You can see it. You can see these things maneuvering. A human body would not be able to sustain life at some of the G's these things are pulling.
He was asked that actually. He was asking the chairman asked him about if they were interdimensional beings. So we've talked about this before. Tucker Carlson believes that they're interdimensional, like angels and demons, and he was asked that, and he specifically said that he was talking about the G's that for like an F-16 can pull up to 17 G's. The G's that these UAPs are pulling could be 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, as he quotes, G's. I will tell you, Weimer, I think I pulled in an F-18 one time in the back seat. I think it was like 7.2, and that's what's called overstress starts happening. And his point was saying that like when you start pulling these G's, like the aircraft that you're in starts getting basically the force that's putting on it, starts structurally compromising its integrity. And that's another thing he's talking about. Like, the craft might be able to take it with this new technology, but like the G's specifically, like when you're talking 1,000 to 3,000%, like you'd be like soup basically inside of that for the force that's going on by the time it would be done.
Exactly.
Which is so fascinating when you hear about it, and that's where like they bring up the fact of like China, that maybe they have advanced drone technology, that some of these potentially could be that, and that's why I think that's one of the ways that they can get around having a hearing in the first place, because there is a national security element with like a foreign adversary that might have a drone technology that could be more advanced than ours. And I want to be extremely vague on my knowledge and all of this for several reasons. But there's a lot of things that I think of when it comes to this, and one of them that I come back to that is a common knowledge is like, I think there's probably some technology where there's like, I've said about direct energy weapons jokingly about sometimes, but like I think there's also probably some sort of weapon that can project like mass. If you're getting kind of understand what I'm saying, like that there would be, because we already have like direct energy weapons where we can direct lasers at something, but I think there's probably like mass that they can directionalize to certain places, and that's a lot of things that you're seeing. And there is the aspect that on your radar that it's coming up, and I think maybe they could even potentially have some sort of like mass that they can generate and manipulate forward, backwards, up and down at high rates, and that's probably out there. I'm sure that's a thing too, but there is some substantial evidence that there's something else out there that we cannot explain. And I do respect Lou. Like he was a very I've watched his podcast with Joe Rogan. That was interesting. How was he, by the way?
As a person? Or how was he as a person? He's short? Shorter than me?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
No, he's very nice, very kind, very soft-spoken, very generous is a good way to put it. Just a good person,
So with these hearings, like, what do you think about the fact that like it's more in the open now? What's your idea on that?
I mean, yeah, it's more in the open, but I just think there's still a very small percentage of people that don't care. So that's why you have people like Lou going around the country, getting more people. I went with somebody I work with, and then other people I'm sure were drugged to it, heard this, get red pilled after watching him speak, and then want to look at it more, and then it grows and grows and grows. Because here's the ultimate thing. It's not about if Mars is going to attack. It's not about that at all. It's
Great.
about why are we getting so many sightings of these things around military bases and nuclear facilities?
Hmm.
That's where a lot of these things are, and this is why it's coming to question on national security. So we as a people should know, like, is this actually a threat or not? Now, this is nothing that's classified. This is all being spoken out in the open. I don't know anything classified personally. I'm learning everything
Neither.
that I've read. I'm not hypothesizing about direct energy weapons or anything like that.
Me neither.
I'm
No.
just saying, like, this is what I've heard. I've heard other people synopse ideas and theories. Um, Lou does use like a scientific method to his thing. He believes in the science, goes through the science, and he actually says people that believe science, they should be trying to break science because that's how you do science. So if people just sit by, well, the science says this, well, if you can break that theory and idea, then you're actually doing science, not the other way around. So there, but I'll in a little bit I'll get more into his presentation and all. But yeah, that was kind of like the main thing was like, is this a threat? And I think it's becoming more relevant. I think even now, because we have our bases in the UK right now. If you just go online, they're getting circled by drones and all kinds of things, and nobody knows where they're coming from.
Yeah, the
So
UK specifically, they talked about in the hearing
yeah,
that happened.
yeah, it's still going on today. I mean, it happened yesterday, I think.
You know, one thing that I wanted to bring up is I always talk about this, about UFO like and UAP like, I get sent these videos and my algorithm on all of these platforms show me these videos, and they're always like these fuzzy videos, and I brought this up like I want a real video. Well, the Mr. Schellenberger, he brought that up that yeah, it's national security and it's classified or whatever, however it's classified, but that there is clear high res photos of these UAPs, going transmedium into water and flying around our aircraft and then hovering over bases. Specifically, there was an event where they were flying around one of our bases. Can't remember. Let me look what it was. Yeah, the Langley Air Base had a bunch of drone sightings. Um, and so Ryan Graves was in the hearing, and Ryan Graves was that Navy pilot that said that he saw I'm always gonna mess this up. Yeah, he said he saw a cube shape inside of a orb, and that then would fly around. And he was seeing it off the coast of Virginia. And he started this 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 program for whistleblowers essentially to get rid of the stigma, as you were talking about. It is interesting to me that they're flying around certain like areas, like you say, like nuclear sites and stuff. Like that's interesting. And Lou was talking about that on the Joe Rogan podcast about how they were acting around these nuclear sites, and they asked him like, have you had any contact with these beings? And he was talking about how you got to define what you mean as far as communication, because he said like, there's a difference between talking and like and acting, and he was saying like when you move in a certain like, you know, I'll get into what he was talking about here in a second, but basically, like if you start acting threatening, like you get in a threatening stance, like let's say you get in a karate stance, like that's basically what he's talking about. Like if you start looking like you're about to fight somebody, that's what he's talking about. Like if you're moving in the air in a way where you're being adversarial, then that's definitely stating a communication to your opponent. And that's what he was talking about. How the weird thing is he was talking about how these entities or whatever they are, entities, UAPs, whatever you want to call it, that sometimes they act in a seems like a good manner and act like in a bad manner. So, which brings up the aspect of like, what Tucker Carlson says, like maybe there's a good and evil aspect to it, but um, I really respected Lou's testimony in that hearing over everybody else's because his was like the most tact. Like
Hmm.
even with the like you said, like it sounds like he knows a whole lot, and he's a very smart man, and he knows what he's talking about, and you can't discredit this man and say he's a kook, is really what I want to get into.
Yeah. No, it's true. He's very thorough in his knowledge and what's going on, and I mean, you obviously have to have a high level of intellect to hold back in certain situations when you're asked questions on the cuff to not just accidentally spill the beans. Um, it's got to be tough, but he is still going through the process, and like I said earlier, is like a lot of the stuff still getting declassified as the days go on, and Freedom of Information Act and everything else is getting more of this stuff out. So eventually he'll be able to talk more about it. Now, the one thing that's got to be certain is that there's a thought uh, that this closure would happen by like 10 years since this is the last 2017 for some reason. That was a date that somebody brought up, but the year. But 10 years since that, it's kind of like the way the process works is by then we should have something. And somebody asked Lou about that question, and he actually said, no, it's going to be sooner than that because we he believes that they want disclosure to happen before something actually happens. So, which was really interesting that he brought that up.
Wow, that's that. How long was the whole like his presentation? How long was that at the?
About an hour and a half, I think.
Wow.
He had a full. So just a quick review. He did have like a full slideshow presentation kind of thing where he introduced himself, who he was, what he did, where he worked, what he did, what he's doing now, and then went through kind of like a scientific method process of UAPs and his methodology, and then all of the tax money and the list of the programs and tests and things that research that the government was doing with our tax money. And a lot of it was interesting. I don't have the list. I wish I would have taken pictures of it or something. But there's stuff on there like the study of non-human intelligence, the study of this and this, the study of this and this, and it was like very strange things that they're like, well, this isn't about checking like researching flight. There's probably 30 to 40 different research studies that were done, all on taxpayer dollars. We paid for it. That had to do with things that weren't necessarily to do with the flights of these things, but had to do with more specific, almost sounded like um, extraterrestrial type talk, I guess. I don't know how else to put it. But yeah, it was very like, huh, wow, they did this. So it was that was interesting. It even went into, which is an interesting thing. I'll just get into it right now really quick. It was about the shapes of all the UAP. So
He
we
did
talk
talk
about,
about that in the hearing, yeah.
yeah. So it was really interesting. All the different shapes of a UFO that you have seen. You got the typical saucer. You have the cigar shape or rods, they'll call them. You have the V shape, almost like a boomerang
Hmm.
or a triangle. And what's interesting was like he was saying, we talked about gravity versus anti-gravity, which he got into different ways that things move. Different things that if you got to take what gravity is, you know, they talk about Isaac Newton and the tree fell or the apple fell out of the tree is one thing, but it's also just a displacement of space in time or whatever. So
Hmm.
while we have a certain force pull on us based on our weight, what if there's a way to create anti-gravity? And so they came up, all their studies came with an idea of like a bubble that kind of surrounded all these crafts. Now, if you take a giant bubble, and instantly reminded me of the movie Explorers, by the way, if you remember watching that with River
Great movie.
Phoenix. So you know how they made that bubble, and they were able to fly around and do everything, right? In the
Right.
tilt the world, tilt the world car, not the whole ride. That would be giant bubble. But so if you take a bubble and you put it on, what shape would fit perfectly inside the bubble? A saucer. And so when everybody sees a light, they always see it in the middle of these things. So the light they think the light that's in there is the energy. Whatever that energy source is, we have no idea. Might be what's making these bubbles occur that could cause them to move like they do. It's a whole different thing inside that bubble where they're not, to us, it's like, oh my gosh, they're going 3,000 Gs. But to them, it may not be. It could be different. So
Right.
that's really interesting. But then you get to so how does that bubble work for something like a cigar? Well, if there's a propulsion in the front and the back of the cigar, that's two bubbles put together. Boom. If it's a triangle, every time those triangle ones are seen, you got three, one on each corner of a light, which is your propulsion. That's three bubbles, right? Boomerang. How many lights you got? Put a bubble around all of them. You got this, and then they can operate these things. Think of Phoenix lights in that sense. With that flying through giant craft, if you know, for instance, for the giant bubbles. So that's kind of a theory that they had with how these things are moving with the anti-gravity stuff. That's kind of the things that I really took away from it was how these things moved, what they were, the studies that were put into these, and then there's a lot of other stuff he took into like he showed us a photo and everybody's like whoa, and then he looked close and it was like totally like a tent. It's like it was just weird things. It was like yeah, every picture you see online, don't believe it, just scrutinize it because he did get a lot of crap a couple of months ago. He posted a picture from Romania. They could never figure it out. Turns out somebody took a picture outside their window at a hotel, and the reflection was just a chandelier in the background. But the way it
Not
was set
surprised.
up, it looked like something coming out of the sky. This was a big window and stuff. So you got to be skeptical on the photos that you see, and not everything is as it is. So, which was interesting when he went through all that. Then he took Q&A at the end. There's some interesting questions people asked. Not everybody did. Some people left because they weren't being able to ask their questions. They were getting angry. But there's a lot of people had a
Oh
lot of
yeah, I
questions.
can see that.
Yeah. So, but it was great. The other thing that stood out because there were some things I took as like the Roswell. There was a Roswell thing, and there's another one that got me. I was like, I didn't know about. Um, and knowing that he knows what he knows, the way said these and answered these questions blew me away. Just nonchalantly, this is what happened. And I was like, so somebody asked, so with Roswell, what do you think caused the craft to crash? He's like, oh, it's really simple. We were testing nuclear weapons, and an EMP or something went up, popped the bubble, and it crashed. I mean, he straight up just said that, and I'm like, what?
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, if like in the Joe Rogan believes that like that they started really showing up after the Manhattan Project when they started testing nuclear bombs,
yeah,
and in that area where Roswell, New Mexico, and all that, that's where we do all of our nuclear testings in Nevada
yeah,
and that area. Yeah, wow, that makes a lot of because EMP is definitely a thing now.
yeah. So it was really interesting. And another one that really got me, and I went home and I looked it up, and you can find articles. It's really quiet. It never made the news. It never made fanfare. It sometimes comes up on a program, but not really. It's kind of suppressed. But he did bring it up that I forget what year it was. It wasn't too terribly long ago that there's still two soldiers that were at the Rendlesham incident, and because there are health consequences with some of the UAPs, people experience like early on, it's like redness of the skin, first degree burn, second degree, third degree, to the point where there's internal organ damage that could happen, and then even time loss could occur. But so there are actually two soldiers that were still alive that are getting full disability from this event.
Hmm. Wow.
So, and that was actually John McCain was actually the one that got that bill put together and got it pushed through. So they are getting VA benefits, basically recognizing that an incident did occur.
I like that. I like that a lot,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. So there's those things I took from other than the what to look for, what to see, pushing, more for disclosure, sharing with more people to, not so much saying, yeah, there's aliens, but take it from a scientific perspective and take it in on that case. So yeah, that was kind of the gist of it. And then I got to meet him afterwards and get a picture with him and sign my book.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool. When you sent me that picture of it, I was so envious. I was like, man, for our listeners, I got to see Josh like the pretty recently. It might have been in November. This
Yeah.
November's been crazy. Like so
Hmm.
many things have happened in this November. I think everybody in America understands that. Yeah, I did see you in this November. Yeah, that's right. I got to see you. I hadn't seen you since I think it was 2017, the last time we actually saw and met in person.
Yeah.
Got to see you for that, and came back, and it's been go 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 for me recently. But yeah, that's amazing. Like that's really cool. Like I wish I was there to see him. Because I respect him. I haven't read his book. I don't have his book. I need to get his book. I've watched several podcasts with him talking.
Hmm.
But I think I'm a pretty good judge of character from what I do for a living, and I can tell that he knows something and that he's
Yeah.
not. I hate the term. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I was burping. I hate the term useful idiot. I think that's such a derogatory term. I don't
Hmm.
like it. And some people give that term for him, and I think that is you should not give that to somebody that was serving our country. And that is I don't like that.
Yeah.
Um, do I think that there's probably certain information that entities in the government give out? Sure. Yeah, probably.
Hmm.
But I think he knows something, and I think he's very selective, just like we all are when we know things, because he does not want to be put in jail and go to prison. Because
Yeah.
there is that aspect of what he's talking about. Because when he sees you and when he talks to senators, like yeah, he can say certain things, but if he goes over that line, he will go to Leavenworth. I don't know if you people know what that is, but that's a federal prison, and I don't know what it is like there, and I don't want to know. But that's where he would go if he starts talking like that.
Hmm.
If he goes over that
Yeah. And plus,
specific
any other
line.
whistleblowers, it would kind of convince them not to come forward, so it wouldn't help the effort at all to even do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So he's doing the right thing, and the best thing is that we as like, well, us that are citizens of non-military and non in the know of things that we research and share with others what we learn. So it's because we're not privy to that, but when our tax money is going towards studying non-biological weapons, but I don't know, maybe the Department of Government Efficiency will fix that problem in the future. So,
So before we end this, I wanted to say several things. And one thing that I wrote out that Lou said um, at the very end of the hearing, the chairwoman, excuse me, said, with non-human biologics, how would you define it? And she went through all of them. And when it got to Lou, it was the like I had to I wanted to write this down, um, and I had to watch it like 7 times to write it down because this is the most educated thing I've ever like heard. Well, one of them, but anyway, he said the ability to react to a stimulus that requires an intellectual thought process. And I was like, what does that mean, man?
yeah,
But I think it's a very vague way of saying like, I don't know, but it's something.
yeah.
Because if you the rest of them said one of them said I don't know. The Mr. Gold, who may or not be a man in black, um, uh, he said modest, biologic or not, which he said he could potentially be non-human, like an AI specifically.
Hmm.
The former admiral said in higher order or non-human, higher intellect, which which everybody's being so like non-specific, and I get it for legal reasons because well for reasons I already specifically outlined that
Hmm.
they don't want to be put in jail, but the
Yeah,
whole
that's
thing's super
beating a dead
fun.
horse on that.
Josh, why don't you end this and let's
Yeah.
end and talking about what we think this really is. I am not going to ask you some random questions that you're not thinking I'm going to ask you. but I did want to get your. I did want to ask, like, one, what was your impression of Lou? And two, what do you think about the fact that we actually have these hearings now?
Yeah, well, first of all, Lou, just based on what I've learned in like even the past couple of years on what I've already thought for most of my life, it was just that it's good to see that we're getting somewhere because if there is actually a threat that could do something to us or our country, individually or other countries, whatever, or being harm our troops overseas here, whatever. It's good that they're starting to take something seriously, and maybe they do know all the answers, or maybe they don't know anything. You always look at the governments thinking they don't know anything; they're too dumb to figure things out. But I honestly, I think they're smart enough to, and we'll get into that. That's a whole different topic on how they get
Or
paid only so much a year, but they're millionaires. But but yeah, when he talks about Lou's been a breath of fresh air, I think, for people that are just now finding him and getting the information. Read his book. We're not like sponsored by Lou. We're not trying to. We don't make money for selling this book or anything. So,
I'm not
um,
sponsored by it anyway, by the way.
yeah. But definitely check out his website. Look up his YouTube interviews. Check out the hearing if you haven't already. Just get more information. Kind of get that information for yourself and what you think could be going on. Some people, like you said, they think he's lying or he's just like a mole or somebody that's just kind of disinformation agent, whatever. But like meeting him in person and seeing what he's really doing, it's really interesting. It's a good experience. It was a lot of what I was expecting with a couple little things I wasn't expecting, which is cool. But yeah, overall, great experience. If he's in your neck of the woods, I would go definitely check him out. I know they said because of the reception and the sellout show that he had in Dallas, that he's going to come back next year. So I'll be there for that. So
Well, if he's coming back, maybe I'll make it a point to fly into my home of record and get to see you and
mhm.
Lou because I'm very jealous that I didn't get to go and see that because I missed him by like what 2 weeks or something.
Yeah, maybe
Uh,
maybe a week. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
that's just
My
last
thing with
Wednesday.
like I said before, I think I'm a pretty good judge of character on a professional level, and I don't think that guy is a provocateur and some sort of person that's just trying to push out misinformation. I think he legitimately knows something. And I can take that just based off his actions. What it is, we're not gonna know. Hopefully, maybe you guys out there, maybe our society is gonna find out sometime soon. I hope we find out something. Josh, this was fun.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot more into this, but we
Oh,
don't want
geez,
to make
yeah,
this
and
episode way too long because we're
yeah,
more into like I mean you know me, Josh, I love alien stuff, big X-Files fan. Um Started watching it because I love to hear stories about aliens, but well, Josh, why
yeah.
don't you
Just
take it away?
I mean, the big thing is like our listeners, if they want us to delve more into UFOs and kind of our thoughts and like weird ideas that I even have about UFOs, we definitely have time about now. And my glasses on this video really look like my eyes. I have magnifying glasses. It's awesome.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
I'm just trying to make you laugh the entire time, but I hope it's gonna work. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, if
You
our
can see it
listeners, I
all.
mean, they made it this long in this episode. If you're interested in hearing our thoughts and crazy questions we have on what I what I have on UFOs, we're just on the top of the surface. We're just reporting what we know right now. Um, but yeah, let us know, and yeah, we really thank you all for listening, and yeah, appreciate the support that we've been getting.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, boy.
Bye.
Bye.